Millionaire left speechless by surprising hospital moment with homeless mother and son. Jake Thompson strode through the fluorescent-lit hallways of the downtown hospital, his tailored suit contrasting starkly with the sterile surroundings. He was a titan in Silicon Valley, renowned for his ruthless business acumen and a staggering fortune that shrouded him in an aura of invincibility. But today's routine visit to the charity program he funded felt like nothing more than an obligation. The air was thick with despair, the cries of patients slicing through the facade he maintained so skillfully. He could almost feel the hollow echo of his success, a reflection of the emotional distance he'd cultivated within himself. As he flicked through charts with unmotivated disinterest, a voice pierced his thoughts, a mother's voice filled with desperation. "Please, he's all I have," the woman wailed, her frail hand gently cradling her son's, attached to a series of tubes and machines. Jake turned, drawn to the scene of stark contrast. This woman, whose warmth radiated despite the looming shadow of poverty, juxtaposed sharply against his own icy ambition. A twinge of guilt stirred deep within him, one he had buried under mountains of accomplishments. Before he could retreat to the safety of business talk, he overheard her pleading with an indifferent nurse. There it was, his first moral dilemma. The nurse's dismissive attitude didn't just frustrate the mother, it exacerbated something within Jake, something he'd long ignored. His heart raced as flashes of his own childhood flooded his mind. Love, laughter, and a mother who had to sacrifice everything for him. Would she have settled for indifference? Should he, with all his wealth, turn away from the face of suffering? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake stepped back, blending in with the cold institutional walls, an observer in a world he felt increasingly part of, yet utterly detached from. The nurse checked Leo's vitals. He was slipping. A dreaded urgency clawed at Jake's insides, each pulse echoing the weight of his own choices, wealth over relationships. Could he let a child suffer while he stood there, a titan too afraid to embrace vulnerability? The mother's voice grew faint as the reality sank deeper. Was he truly so lost that a simple act of kindness threatened his carefully crafted empire? His body tensed, muscles rigid with the pressure of the moment. This was not just about charity, it was about morality, humanity, and the choices that defined them. As Leo's condition declined, Jake was thrust into swirling chaos, a self-made battlefield of wealth and the piercing need for redemption. Seizing the old family photo from his wallet, his late mother's smile broke through his steely demeanor, revealing the dissonance of his frantic mind. Memories, almost painful now, reminded him of a boy raised with unwavering love, not mere ambition. Every second that passed felt like losing more than money. It forced him to confront the hollow core of his existence. In the dim light of the hospital, realization crashed over him. He stood at a crossroads that could either seal his fate or launch an unexpected journey toward reconnection. Just as he inhaled deeply to summon the courage to speak, the room vibrated with raw silence. Nothing felt certain, everything hung in the balance. Would he shatter the walls of his emotional exile, or would he recede back into the shadows of self-preservation, leaving Sarah and Leo to cling to despair? The air grew thick, pulsating with unspoken decisions, and Jake felt the weight of something monumental pressing down. The answer to a question only he could resolve loomed ahead. Jake inhaled deeply, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling his nostrils as he wrestled with himself. The minutes bled into one another, filled with tension, expectation, and an awakening sense of urgency. Here he was, a man with the world at his fingertips, paralyzed by the sight of a mother who had nothing to give but love, and a son who fought for his breaths amidst wires and beeping machines. A wave of frustration hit him, not against the nurse or the system, but against his own complacency. So much accolades, so much wealth amassed, and yet here he stood at the precipice of a decision that could reframe his life's purpose. What good was wealth if it couldn't forge connections or save lives? The question struck deeper. Could he return to his boardroom, to the polished floors and the ego-stroking deals, knowing he had the capacity to act and chose not to? In a flash, the woman's gaze caught his. Her eyes held a pleading desperation that felt like a direct line into his soul. Heart racing, Jake approached them, each step echoing loudly against the hospital's walls. This was the moment that would define him, a chance to breach the fortress he had surrounded himself with. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but raw. As the nurse turned, her frown deepened, but Jake's presence seemed to command attention. "What's happening here?" The nurse hesitated, and the mother, stepping forward, explained between sobs. "Leo needs a special treatment that we can't afford. I keep asking, but they say it might be too late." Each word she uttered cut through his indifference like a knife, unraveling the pretense he had so carefully crafted. He eyed Leo, fragile, hopeful, grasping at life while tethered to a machine. Something ignited in Jake, a flicker of humanity he thought he had long extinguished. Each heartbeat felt like a summons from the past, calling him back to a time when compassion was instinctual. Before he could lose his nerve, he pulled out his phone, his mind racing with the possibilities. Contacts flooded his thoughts, philanthropic friends, hospital networks, influential figures. He typed furiously, setting in motion a series of calls for assistance in real time. As he reached out, he felt walls around him begin to crumble. This moment was redefining his existence. He was no longer an observer, but a participant in someone else's struggle. The nurse watched him with a mixture of skepticism and surprise. "You really think you can find help?" she asked, arms crossed as if to shield her heart from disappointment. "I will," Jake replied with conviction, a hint of a smile breaking through the stoicism that had become his armor. Words poured out of him with newfound clarity. He wasn't just speaking, he was positioning himself to change a narrative, to become a part of a story larger than himself. As names flashed between his contacts and the hospital principals began to take form, Jake felt a subtle shift within himself, a desire to reconnect, to forge alliances not just for profit, but for purpose. With each call, he realized he held the agency to create outcomes beyond his own desires. But just as the first hints of hope began to blossom, the gravity of the situation pressed down again. A nurse interrupted with updates that snapped Jake from his momentum. The treatment could take hours, and Leo's condition was precarious. The urgency grew thicker now. Decisions needed to be made, and Jake could feel the sands of time slipping through his fingers. He stood there, now entrenched deeper in this emotional cause, feeling the stirrings of a commitment that could irrevocably alter his path. The fight for Leo's life became a crucible for his own, the stakes rising and blood pumping in his veins. Would he sustain this newfound responsibility, or was he destined to slip back into the comforts of his towering empire of wealth? Jake glanced down at the mother, whose weary face was etched with hope trembling on the edge of despair. The door behind him swung open, revealing a hospital administrator with eyes full of concern. "We need to talk about Leo's case." The pivotal moment had arrived, and with it came an inevitable confrontation. Jake's heart hammered as he realized this could determine not just a child's fate, but also his own journey toward rebirth. Would he stand his ground, ready to fight against the status quo, or would fear tether him once again? The moment to act was now. Jake's pulse quickened as the administrator's gaze bore into him, that demanding weight almost tangible. The challenge was clear. If he hesitated, if he faltered now, all that he had begun to build would collapse back into the persona he wore for so many years, a man who never truly cared. We need to assess our options. There are protocols, the administrator said, his voice pushing through the haze of panic that swirled in Jake's mind. The bureaucratic language sent shards of frustration through him, reminding him of the very systems that perpetuated suffering. But Jake wasn't there for policies, he was there for Leo. "What about the protocol for saving a life?" Jake interjected, his voice sharper than expected. The administrator frowned, not accustomed to pushback from well-heeled donors. "It's complex, Mr. Benedict. Insurance, funding—" "Funds," Jake interrupted, feeling the energy surge through him. "I have funds. I can release them immediately if it means prioritizing Leo's treatment." An eyebrow raised. The administrator's skepticism flickered momentarily. "That can't be." "Why not?" Jake countered. "He's a child. If I can help, I will help." The conviction in his voice felt like a revelation to him. The instinct to reach out, to make a difference, rather than merely fund it, took root within his heart, a seed he hadn't known existed. Still, the administrator hesitated, computing the risks involved, weighing Jake's assertions against a bridge built with caution and red tape. "Let me explain to you how hospitals function. Let me explain humanity to you," Jake snapped, shocked by his own words. The reality of Leo's situation burgeoned in his mind. In that moment, the distance between him and the child shrank, revealing a chasm filled with his own fear. Did he truly have the courage to step into the chaos he had witnessed? He was suddenly struck not just by the gravity of what lay ahead, but also by a profound realization. His years spent in corporate boardrooms, surrounded by wealth, had softened his heart's edges. He wasn't merely a financier. He had always possessed the capacity to mobilize change. The boardroom applause faded away, replaced by the voice of Leo's mother. "I don't want anybody to suffer like us," she whispered from her corner, her words laced with the rawness of a strained existence. "If we could only give him a chance." Chilled, Jake turned to face her, an invitation reflected in her glistening eyes that held a mixture of desperation and hope. The idea that he could be a champion for this mother's plea twisted thoughts of indulgence into strands of purpose. "Let me talk to the doctors," he said, directing his next steps toward the nearest nurse's station. The administrator's shocked gaze followed him, but Jake was now beyond distraction. Each stride forward emitted a quiet reverberation of promise. "Do you know how many days we've battled for this chance?" the mother called after him, her voice cracking slightly. "You're our last hope." Determination coiled inside him as he reached the nurses. A hastily constructed plan began forming in his mind, one forged on the steel of urgency and the fires of empathy. "You don't have to go through this alone," he declared, his voice steady, a newfound authority emanating from within. The interactions that had felt so burdensome moments ago began to simplify, as he became resolute in will. He wouldn't allow bureaucratic inertia to rob a child of his chances. As he relayed Leo's story to the staff, his focus sharpened. He demanded updates on the treatment process and contacted experts in pediatric care, offering financial resources on the condition that they prioritize Leo's needs. The walls around him had melted away, replaced by a fierce sense of alignment. With every connection made, Jake felt the stirrings of something rare, integrity commingling with purpose. The very act of engagement felt therapeutic, reigniting a fire that had long been dormant within him. But moments later, a familiar flicker of doubt ignited. In the depths of his mind, the specter of cynicism loomed. What if all of this effort was futile? For every step forward he took, there stood a potential for setback. Jake paused. He knew the fight wouldn't be easy. He could almost see the gavel of fate hovering above, waiting to strike. He took a breath, ready to navigate through the shift of priorities and the emotional labyrinth ahead. Change came with sacrifices, and he sensed his own values being tested as boundaries blurred, positioning him on a path toward transformation. The hospital doors swung open again, and the murmur of discontent wheeled into the room, merging into an oppressive air of uncertainty. With his heart racing, Jake knew the possibility of salvation hung precariously in the balance. He turned, ready to face whatever challenge loomed. "Are you prepared to confront the consequences of insurgency?" the administrator called after him, a warning mixed with intrigue. The question echoed in his mind, signaling an awakening. The moment had finally arrived for Jake to choose between comfort and conscious commitment, perhaps even threatening everything he once believed to be foundational in his life. He stood still for a brief second, understanding the magnitude of the confrontation ahead. A choice beckoned, dark and transformative. Would he rise to resist a system designed to protect the privileged, or yield to the frightening prospect of personal sacrifice? The air shifted around him, and in the throbbing core of that moment, Jake understood. The real journey was just beginning. Jake's strategic pivot to assertiveness gradually transformed the atmosphere in the sterile hospital hallway. With each conversation, he sensed the shifting power dynamics. The urgency in his voice cracked the sheen of complacency that had enveloped the administrator and staff. Yet, within the surge of empowerment lay the faint thrum of anxiety, the realization that he was stepping into a battle far more complex than any corporate negotiation. As he stood before the nurses, an urgency kindled within him. Sensing their fear of jeopardizing their own positions, he pushed through the familiar feelings of discomfort. "I need the best treatment for Leo, and I am willing to go against protocol for this," Jake stated, his intent crystal clear. The nurses exchanged glances, evaluating their own constraints against the visceral appeal of his words. Suddenly, one of the nurses, a woman with warm eyes and a hint of empathy, spoke up. "You know, influencing protocol is one thing, but actually ensuring the treatment is given requires a tightly woven collaboration. It's not just about the funds." Her voice held a conviction that tugged at his memory of board meetings where profit overshadowed purpose. Jake nodded, taking her words in like air. "Then let's collaborate. I have resources. Let's channel them into what really matters," he insisted, seeing a flicker of interest ignite within the staff. Yet he was vulnerable. Each word he uttered could lead either to monumental change or exacerbate the dangers already threatening Leo's existence. In the ensuing moments together, they drafted letters to key decision-makers and outlined immediate interventions for Leo's care. Jake's heart raced as he wielded his influence, each keystroke adding weight to the shift from apathy to action. Even then, shadows of doubt crept in. What if the very system he was trying to disrupt was more powerful than his resolve? The looming question lingered. Was he prepared to embrace the systemic change that could save a child, even if it risked personal backlash? He paused, breathing deeply as he faced his own internal conflict. Would the backlash render him vulnerable? And how could he reconcile that with the newfound sense of passion that had begun to reformulate his identity? Despite the severe implications, he felt a sense of clarity wash over him. Engaging with reality had forced him to confront the layers of his character, often concealed beneath greed and comfort. In the boardroom, he had often played it safe, but here he couldn't afford safety when a life hung in the balance. "Look, I'm in this for Leo, to fight for every child like him," Jake said, finding renewed assertiveness amidst the doubts swirling in his mind. "My personal comfort can't outweigh this risk." In that moment, he made peace with the potential fallout, understanding it might ultimately refashion who he was becoming. As the group built momentum, he exchanged glances with Leo's mother, whose hopes intensified each time Jake pushed through barriers. The connection they shared felt electric, a fusion of common purpose igniting an indomitable will. Hours passed, and the initial flurry of action quieted to a tense pace. Jake felt eyes upon him, the administrator continuing to loom as the embodiment of every institutional resistance. But the longer he engaged with the staff, the steadier his resolve grew. "Take a risk with me," he urged the nurses once more. "Let's push for what we know is right." He threw caution to the wind, amplifying his convictions into pledges of action, resources, and advocacy. As the clock ticked down, he received pages of medical reports and treatment plans. Lifting a pen to sign off on the requests felt electrifying yet terrifying, a pledge not only to Leo's care, but also to a transformative vision of his own legacy. With one final challenge looming overhead, Jake recognized a profound truth. To confront systemic injustice meant forcing open avenues that had been long shuttered. He had already breached the glass, but the essence of true commitment would soon command every ounce of his integrity. Suddenly, the administrator swept into the room. "This is becoming more complicated than we anticipated," he said coldly, as if inspecting the horizon for a storm. "We may need to withdraw support if you can't adhere to standard protocols." Jake locked eyes with him, a storm brewing inside. The struggle for patient care had become a battle for his own future, and he finally understood the weight of the fight. The stakes were unbearably high, and the confrontation that lay ahead promised to redefine everything he stood for. "Then let the storm come," Jake challenged. "I am ready." Each heartbeat matched the pulse of the imminent confrontation, driving him to forge a path toward change, however daunting. Next would come the moment that could either dismantle his purpose or illuminate a new direction, an irrevocable choice that would soon unfold, challenging everything he thought he knew about himself and his mission. Jake felt the shift in the room as the administrator's declaration hung heavily in the air, a potent reminder that he stood on the precipice of a much larger conflict. The tension surged within him, drawing him away from rational deliberation and closer to a visceral confrontation that demanded clarity. What he envisioned as a pathway to saving Leo had suddenly morphed into a battleground for his integrity and values, laying bare the profound implication of his choices. With the nurses watching him, expectation swirling in their eyes, Jake fought to quell the rising tide of anxiety threatening to unravel his resolve. He had committed to step beyond the limiting protocols of the hospital, but he now faced the fierce glare of institutional authority. The administrator, with his insipid demeanor, epitomized everything Jake had once accepted as unchangeable. "How much is a life worth to you?" Jake found himself asking, the very question a dagger cutting through the air. The administrator's gaze hardened, yet Jake pressed on. "You act as though paper guidelines outweigh the well-being of patients. I refuse to back down because it's inconvenient for you." The administrator's lips thinned into a dismissive line. "You're not thinking rationally. This is about the hospital's reputation and the broader implications of your actions." "That's the problem." Jake's voice shook with frustration. "Reputation comes at the expense of humanity. Every minute we delay could cost Leo his life." The ensuing silence felt like an invitation for change, and in it, Jake realized his mission had evolved from simply advocating for Leo to confronting a system that perpetuates inhumanity. It was a dangerous stance, one that could alienate him from colleagues or even lead to significant backlash. Yet, for the first time, he embraced the discomfort. He turned back to the nursing staff, conferring a shared burden upon them. We can change this together. I have the resources, you have the knowledge. Let's strike a new deal, not just for Leo, but for every patient neglected by protocol. The energy in the room shifted. He could sense hope fluttering in their hearts as they mulled over the notion of collective power. A nurse stepped forward. If you're willing to fight for Leo, we're behind you. But we need a plan. We need to work smart, not recklessly. Her words ignited Jake's strategic thinking. Then let's develop a three-pronged approach. Advocacy for immediate resources, collaborative outreach to leverage our networks, and a direct challenge to the administrator where necessary. As they began brainstorming, every suggestion, every constructive accusation, every fortified resolve began solidifying connections among them. Within moments, Jake saw the shift in the environment. An undercurrent of determination began to drown out the administrator's ominous presence. Their own fears were becoming less like weights and more like catalysts. Let's document everything, Jake advised. Every conversation, every decision can be crucial. We need to build an irrefutable case. While translating resolve into action, Jake felt an awakening of sorts. Each step he took down this unexpected road mirrored the professional ambitions he once chased with fervor. Only now, these motives were derived from a place far deeper than profit margins. Yet, as ideas flowed and complex initiatives took shape, doubt crept in again. What if they were caught? What if this backfired, not only on him, but also on the nursing staff, whose lives might become entangled in disciplinary proceedings? Self-preservation whispered its caution, trying to lure him back into the shadows of comfort. Let's stand together, he urged fervently, his heart aligning with collective courage, where once it was weary from self-doubt. As if testing the very fabric of their alliance, he locked eyes with the nurse who had first challenged him. I can't do this alone. Are you with me? Yes, but we need to be prepared for a reaction, she affirmed, a fire igniting in her gaze. Jake nodded in agreement. Strength in numbers was their lifeline, but he couldn't help but muse over one ulterior motive he hoped to achieve. Was he not also seeking to dismantle the roots of his old self? As the discussions deepened into strategy and determination, he grasped a vital insight. Not only was he fighting for Leo's life, but also wrestling with his own past choices and their ramifications. With the administrator's shadow looming outside their makeshift war room, Jake became resolute. He had not only found his fight for Leo, but a battle for his own identity, one forged in resilience against the very system that once defined him. In that moment, clarity crystallized his perception. His confrontation with the administrator would be inevitable. Beyond that, he felt a stirring need for negotiation, but this time for something far more important than protocol. And as the murmurs of strategy gained momentum, an idea began to form that was both terrifying and exhilarating. In his plan to wrest control from entrenched authority, they were about to expose more than just the systemic failures of hospital. Protocol. They were on the brink of unveiling the latent power within themselves that could challenge the very fabric of the institution. At that moment, Jake fully embraced the intersection of his professional and personal evolution, understanding that to confront an adversary might ultimately reveal the terrifying consequences of his decisions. As the clock ticked down to the pivotal confrontation, Jake's heart raced with anticipation, aware that the outcome could either further his quest for justice or leave him vulnerable. Would the next move solidify his newfound purpose, or would the storm threaten to wash away everything he was fighting for? In the seconds that followed, a charged silence enveloped the room, amplifying the intensity of Jake's internal conflict.
He felt the weight of responsibility shifting from his shoulders to that of the dedicated nursing staff surrounding him. Together, they formed a unique tapestry of abilities and insights, yet he couldn't dismiss the gravity of the storm they were about to unleash. He had always prided himself on being a solo act, but now was painfully aware that his very survival and that of Leo depended on teamwork. The nurse who had stepped forward, named Clara, was relentless in her quest for clarity. We need to map out every possible consequence of our actions. The administrator won't hesitate to strike back if challenged. How do we keep ourselves safe? Her voice held the steadiness of someone who had endured adversity, a voice Jake now took comfort in. Jake inhaled, feeling the air weighted with uncertainty. We reinforce our positions. Legal counsel can help protect us, and we document everything. An audit trail can shield us from repercussions if the backlash reaches us. We need to be smart. She nodded thoughtfully, but Jake saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. It mirrored the apprehension he felt, and a gnawing realization dawned on him. Each of them had their own lives to protect, their careers to safeguard. The personal stakes were rising, transforming this into a bespoke battlefield of beliefs. With a swift transition, Jake grabbed a whiteboard marker and began writing down their strategy, each point a declaration of their determination. As he scribbled, each stroke transformed his anxious energy into focused conviction. He wrote advocacy, documentation, and networking, understanding in that moment that these weren't just action items, they were their shield and sword against an indifferent system. Engaging allies can amplify our voices, Jake said, turning to face the group. But we'll be at risk if this fails. If we get caught, it's not just me, it's all of us. Then we outsmart the system, Clara replied, her fierce gaze steadying him. We need to think 2 moves ahead. Every detail matters. Tension bubbled within him as he considered the implications of failure. He had sacrificed so much already. The fear of loss clawed at him, yet now the thought of retreat felt alien, unthinkable. They spent the next hour constructing a vocal rally against the status quo, leveraging the relationships they had fostered and preparing for the inevitable fallout. The dialogue exchanged became fervent as courage seeped into their discussions, as though with every collective idea shared, the enormity of the challenge became just a little more surmountable. With each strategic outline they crafted, Jake felt less like someone clutching at straws and more like a burgeoning leader. The act of planning transformed his perception of the conflict into a burgeoning movement. For Leo, yes, but also for future patients doomed to suffer under the weight of bureaucracy. It was a profound relationship between their aspirations and reality. And with that realization flooded Jake's veins with a sense of purpose, distilling his prior fears into an action plan. Despite the clarity of his mission, he still harbored troubling sentiments. Inside him, the disquieting specter of vulnerability edged closer. What if this overwhelming drive to combat authority blurred the lines between right and wrong? What if his newfound resolve led to reckless decisions? As ideas bridged into action, the dynamic began to shift again. The nurse beside him voiced the dread they all shared. We're about to challenge a system designed to protect itself. What if we become the ones in need of protection? Jake felt his heart race. Then we bolster our defenses. We can't let fear paralyze us. We're saving lives here. His voice was firmer than he felt. A collective breath seemed to fuel their resolve, but as the meeting drew to a close, Jake couldn't shake the lingering thought. What was he truly prepared to risk? Determined to stake a decisive claim that would define not only Leo's fate, but also serve as a testimony to his newfound conviction, he looked around at the determined faces of his allies. Tomorrow we'll launch our advocacy, he declared, conviction threading his voice, and we'll be ready for whatever comes next, together. But with the plan set in motion, Jake's internal alarm was blaring. As empowerment surged through him, deep-rooted fears echoed. The stakes were greater now. Were they ready for the consequences? The imminent confrontation loomed, but he sensed the ground beneath him cracking open. That thought slammed into him. What awaited them beyond their nascent rebellion? The clock ticked against him, and he felt a rising wave of doubt. What if he was provoking an irreversible avalanche? In that bleak moment, Jake was thrust into his personal abyss. Comfortable in his role as the hero, yet uncertain of the price his ambition would demand. They were at the edge of change, but change often came with a cost. Would he pay it? As the room emptied, anticipation swirled around him, a cue for the inevitable drama about to unfold. He braced himself, knowing the time had come to face not just the administrator, but ultimately the profound risks intertwined with his own ambition. Jake spent the night wrestling with his thoughts, his mind a veritable storm of uncertainty and determination. Tossing on the small cot in the staff room, he replayed the events of the day, questioning each decision with an intensity that felt both draining and clarifying. The group's solidarity in the face of the upcoming confrontation was palpable, yet he alone had sparked the flame. Navigating the intersection of right and wrong weighed heavily on him, further complicating his resolve. Morning light crept through the window, marking the start of a pivotal day. Jake forced himself to rise, the weight of their shared mission pushing him into action. With each passing moment, the adrenaline coursed through him, infusing him with both purpose and unease. He crafted an itinerary for the day, each scheduled meeting reinforcing his commitment to the cause and outlining risks they would need to manage. As he made his way to the hospital, the rhythm of his footsteps echoed with the thoughts he had yet to articulate. He could feel the stakes rising, amplifying the tension in his chest. Each nurse he passed in the bustling hallways wielded a brush to paint the canvas of his determination. He was merely a conduit for their collective hopes. The atmosphere in the break room quickly turned electric as his nursing allies began to filter in, their eyes alight with a shared mission. Clara was the first to approach him. "Are you ready?" Her question was direct, her gaze unyielding. Jake hesitated for a moment, assessing his own state of readiness. "I think so. We need to focus on what we can control. Let's stick to the facts and not get caught up in emotions." He felt his words reverberate, solidifying a belief in his own leadership, even while unsure of the path ahead. The group convened, and as they discussed their strategy, Jake found his voice naturally gravitating to a more assertive tone. The energy in the room shifted. It was as if each exchange chipped away at his self-doubt, revealing hints of a burgeoning leader. Clara outlined their approach, collecting testimonials from patients, gathering data that demonstrated systemic flaws, and effectively crafting a narrative that showcased their fight for justice. However, as they spoke, Jake couldn't ignore the flickering doubts lurking at the edges of his thoughts. Advocacy could easily morph into confrontation. What if they lost their jobs? What if he lost Leo? The shadows of these fears loomed larger, gnawing at his courage. "Jake?" Clara's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you sure we're ready for this? If the administrator catches wind of our plans—" Her voice trailed off, an unspoken reality hanging in the air. He met her gaze, steadying himself against the wave of anxiety. "We have each other's backs. We're prepared. But that doesn't mean we can't expect pushback. We need to be prepared for anything." Her expression softened slightly, but the concern lingered in her eyes. "We need to remind ourselves why we're doing this. The patients, they are counting on us." With the meeting drawing to a close, Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself for the looming confrontation with the administrator. He sensed the potential for something transformative on the horizon. The moment could be a reckoning, not just for Leo, but for anyone who had ever felt silenced beneath the weight of institutional apathy. As his colleagues began filtering out, Jake remained, the tension coiling tight around him. Pieces of his identity were at stake, his career, his convictions. Yet there was something exhilarating about it too. This was the crucible that would forge him into the leader he had never imagined he could be. Yet deep inside, doubt nudged him like an unwelcome shadow. Would he break under pressure? Was he capable of taking on the administration? The challenges ahead felt insurmountable, yet he realized that within these fears lay the opportunity for immense growth. He straightened his shoulders and stepped forward. Today would be a tipping point. Failure was not a destination, but rather an inevitable part of a journey toward triumph. With his heart racing, Jake made the final preparations, knowing that he was no longer just an advocate for one patient. He was asserting a voice for change, a voice that demanded to be heard. But as he set his plan into motion, another thought pierced through the suffocating uncertainty. Was he truly ready to carry the burden of such responsibility? The clock was ticking, and the inevitable encounter with the administrator was fast approaching. He clenched his fists, determination mingling with apprehension. It was time to confront not just the bureaucracy, but the very fabric of his own ambition. As the room emptied, Jake steadied himself, aware that he was at the precipice of change. Just how far was he willing to go? Jake took a step back, the door to his own responsibilities looming before him like an impenetrable wall. The hallway outside the break room buzzed with activity. Nurses rushing to their stations, carrying on with their daily duties, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in Jake's chest. He could almost hear the ticking clock, each second amplifying the weight of the task ahead and his internal conflict. Steeling himself, he embraced the challenge. Today, he had to be the voice they collectively needed. The question nagging at him, was he enough? In the solitude of his thoughts, he felt the stirrings of an unexpected resolve. He envisioned not only which arguments he would present, but also how he could connect with the administrator's humanity. Would his personal approach soften the indifference? Jake made his way down the corridor, the polished floors reflecting his furrowed brow. He passed by the waiting room, where families anxiously waited for news about loved ones, their faces etched with worry. A mother cradling her son caught his eye. The fragile hope in her gaze rekindled the fire within him. They were the reason he was stepping into this battle, reason enough to expose the flaws he'd witnessed too often in the system. His own voice echoed in his mind, firming up his stance. I speak for them, for every.
As he approached the administrator's office, Jake's thoughts turned to his peers. Their trust in his judgment felt like a double-edged sword, empowering yet precarious. He briefly closed his eyes, imagining Clara's trust and the faces of his colleagues filled with apprehension and hope. It was no longer just his career on the line, it was their future too. The secretary smiled politely as he entered the office. An unsettling calm permeated the air. The administrator, a seasoned veteran weighed down by bureaucratic expectations, sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, glancing over papers. Jake swallowed hard, feeling the gravity of the moment. With every fiber of his being, he wanted to make a genuine impact without losing sight of his original intention, patient care. Mr. Harrington, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? The administrator's tone was arched, a challenge hanging beneath the courteous greeting. Jake squared his shoulders, a breath escaping him as he endeavored to control the flood of emotions battling within. I'm here to discuss some patient experiences that highlight systemic issues impacting care and to suggest solutions. Mentioning solutions struck a chord, a sign of his strategy reforming into tangible, constructive dialogue. He held on to that as he articulated the need for change, laying out patient testimonials and data like a map guiding the conversation. Yet with every rebuttal the administrator tossed back, unease threatened to engulf him. Was his approach too mild? Should he be more confrontational? But conflicting thoughts only bred hesitation, so he anchored back to the core of his message, the patience. Exposing his vulnerability, he shared a poignant story about Leo, eager to reveal the face of institutional neglect. It was a tale of struggle and hope, and as he spoke, the walls of the office felt as though they were closing in, leaving him to confront his own limitations. "What you're suggesting isn't realistic, Jake. We're bound by policies." His heart raced at the implications of that statement. Did he place himself in jeopardy or empower himself through this confrontation? "But policies should be reevaluated if they don't serve people," he asserted, daring the administrator to meet his gaze. In that moment, a flicker of recognition ignited within him. Perhaps the confrontation was not solely with the administration's rigid structure, but with his sense of fear rooted in self-doubt. As the exchange escalated, fresh resolve rushed through Jake. What if this moment was more than just an appeal for change? What if it was a reflection of his rebirth? The administrator leaned back, intrigued yet guarded, maintaining an air of restraint. "You're brave to come here and voice this, I'll give you that." Perhaps there lay the opening he needed. The realization dawned on him that every discussion could change the trajectory. Each word he spoke embodied hope. But then a sudden interruption jolted him back to the present. A nurse rushed in with urgent news, her breath quickened.
"There's been an incident in the ward," she gasped, glancing at Jake before continuing. "A patient needs immediate help." This wasn't merely a distraction. It felt like a crossroads. The stakes had escalated, and Jake's resolve was about to be tested in the most profound way. Would he abandon a moment for change or step forward bravely, balancing his responsibilities? The decision lingered like a specter, ushering a new chapter as another figure loomed on the horizon, a fellow nurse fraught with anxiety and determination. Would he be equipped to navigate the next storm? Jake's mind raced as the nurse's words echoed in his ears, a frantic urgency cutting through the weight of his confrontation. The pulse of adrenaline surged in his veins, colliding with his previous discussions about systemic issues. In a heartbeat, the enormity of the situation shifted from engaging the administrator to the immediate need of a vulnerable patient. "Where?" he asked, already crossing the threshold of the office into the bustling hallway. The nurse gestured with a trembling hand, her anxiety almost palpable. "Room 202. It's Leo. He's deteriorating." At the mention of Leo, Jake's chest tightened, the stakes now personal. He had shared Leo's story to advocate for change. Now he needed to act. The administrator's voice blurred in the background, its conversations a faint murmur overshadowed by the urgency pulling him forward. As he neared room 202, Jake's thoughts clamored for clarity. This wasn't just about the policies he aimed to challenge, it was about real lives, real heartbreak. Stepping inside, the atmosphere thickened with tension. Nurses flitted around the room, their faces set in a grim determination. There, beneath the sterile hospital sheets, lay Leo, pale and struggling to breathe. "Jake!" Clara's voice cut through the chaos. She stood at the bedside, her eyes wide with concern. "His vitals are fluctuating. We need to stabilize him fast." Jake nodded, ancient fears wafting through his mind, clashing with his newfound resolve. He approached Leo, glancing at the array of medical equipment surrounding him, the beeping monitors spelling out the gravity of the situation. With practiced movements, Clara implemented protocols while Jake provided support. But as he held Leo's frail hand, he felt the weight of his earlier conversation with the administrator bear down. For every procedure being run, every policy being followed, what if they didn't work? What if Leo became just another statistic in a flawed system that he so desperately wanted to change? "Breathe, Leo. Stay with us," Jake whispered, unsure if his words offered any comfort or merely echoed his own fear. He could see the flicker of hope in Clara's eyes. They were fighting not just for a patient, but against their own doubts, a battle shared, yet deeply personal. As the team worked together, Jake's mind recalibrated. The conversations about policy loomed in the background, but the immediacy of Leo's struggle provided clarity. He was learning that change wasn't always about grand confrontations. Sometimes it was in the smallest gestures of care, in
refusing to back down when a life was on the line. "Crank up the oxygen," Clara called, urgency igniting her commands. Jake's hands moved with confidence now. They had become extensions of his resolve. As he adjusted the equipment, feeling the pulse of the moment, he understood that this experience, profound and turbulent, was shaping him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He wasn't merely an advocate or a voice, he was a lifeline tethering care to compassion. With Leo's breathing stabilizing, a collective sigh of relief rolled through the room. But the victory felt fragile, a whisper against the backdrop of the ongoing fight. As the nurses rallied and stabilized Leo, Jake's gaze met Clara's, their understanding palpable. This shared moment forged an unspoken alliance. The administration's walls? They seemed to echo faintly in his mind. Today, he witnessed firsthand what it meant to be at the nexus of care and consequence. But even as hope flickered, Jake knew the conversation wasn't over. The fight against systemic neglect wasn't fading away, it had merely shifted form. As the team began to regroup, Jake looked towards the door, a new determination igniting within him. Before he knew it, his footsteps were leading him back through the ward, searching for the administrator. The time had come to face the very structures that held them back, he murmured to himself as another nurse passed by him, her expression grim yet resolute. Would he find the courage to confront the barriers once more, armed with the fire ignited in the hospital room? The revelation dawned that this moment was just the beginning of a much larger battle. Jake stood at the edge of the bustling pediatric ward, the warmth of the summer sun filtering through the windows, casting a glow on the faces of the families gathered there. The sharp contrast between the sterile environment of the hospital and the life beyond it served as a constant reminder. It wasn't just the patients who needed saving, but the entire system that had too long failed them. With Leo's recovery making remarkable progress, Jake had harnessed a new sense of purpose, the desire to ensure no child faced the bureaucratic indifference that Leo had endured. He had become not only an advocate for Leo, but a leader, one who demonstrated that wealth could indeed foster humanity rather than drown it. Months had passed since that fateful day when he stood before the administrator. The confrontation had been arduous, balanced on the precipice of personal risk and moral imperative. But Jake had taken the reins, articulating the desperate need for systemic improvements, presenting compelling evidence based on Leo's ordeal as a catalyst for reform. The shift had been profound. Other stakeholders had begun to support the movement he spearheaded, emboldened by his passionate dedication. Reflecting on that pivotal moment filled him with a sense of empowerment he had never before known. He had gone from a corporate titan to a champion of the very fabric of human dignity. Healthcare. It had been a transformation requiring significant introspection. As he stood there, he understood that success had not merely been conquered through influence, but had surged forth from genuine connection and accountability. The efforts put forth with Clara, the nursing staff, and even other parties from his professional network led to the establishment of a task force aimed explicitly at pushing for humane reform in pediatric care protocols. They convened, meeting to discuss not only the immediate needs of patients, but also to shape a narrative that championed reform for future generations. When the news of the newly implemented policies came in, the opening of funds, the restructuring of administrative protocols to prioritize patient care rather than rigid guidelines, it felt like each small victory fueled an unstoppable momentum. Jake reveled in this newfound confidence, igniting a belief that systemic change was not only possible but essential. As he navigated his way through the ward that afternoon, familiar faces greeted him with gratitude. Previously weary parents now bore expressions of hope that provided them the strength to carry on. The connection among them, forged from past struggles, became an unbreakable bond. Jake felt profoundly proud, not for his wealth, but for the tangible impact of their work. The accolades that buzzed within those walls were far richer than any financial success he had ever known. In the months ahead, the hospital would celebrate achievements not just in patient care, but in the collective resilience of the staff and the patients alike. Awards and honors adorned the walls, but Jake had one singular trophy that no one could take from him: the transformation of his own spirit and dedication to genuine human connection. Propagation of this knowledge didn't stop within the walls of the hospital. Jake had taken strides to ensure this initiative reached other institutions. He spoke at conferences, shared Leo's story as an emblem of change, and inspired action where hope seemed lost. He partnered with community leaders to create outreach programs extending beyond the hospital, painting a broader picture of healthcare accessibility for underprivileged families. Stepping into the adjacent room, Jake found Clara engaged with a patient's family, the atmosphere brimming with warmth and camaraderie. They exchanged smiles filled with mutual respect, echoing unsaid gratitude for each other's efforts. It was a testament to their growth, a reminder of where they had started, tangled in fear and self-doubt. "Clara," he called, and she turned to him, eyes sparkling with vitality. "Look at this," she gestured, drawing his attention to a piece of paper above the nurse's station. It was a thank you note from Leo's mother, written simply yet overwhelmingly. "Because of you, my son's future is bright." Jake felt a rush of fulfillment wash over him, the relentless pursuit of his own transformation magnified in this moment. His heart swelled with the knowledge that authentic change originated from beneath the surface, emerging only when someone dared to breach the walls of self-preservation. He took a deep breath, feeling solid within himself as he echoed his past. Wealth had been his currency, but humanity became his newfound strength. "Clara, today is the day we make this official," he said with confidence, handing her an invitation he had prepared. In that moment, he knew it was time to invite the other institutions to join them. The beginning of a comprehensive program destined to reshape children's health care everywhere. Jake's ambition, once cloaked in ambition and empire building, now teemed with purpose and resolve. The man who had once been defined by skyscrapers and stock markets now stood grounded, rooted in compassion, a legacy built on integrity and authentic connection. "Let's take this beyond just our hospital," he added. "Together, we can redefine what care looks like on a national scale." Together, they celebrated the power of perseverance, the fabric of compassion weaved into the very soul of healthcare reform. Jake felt he had accomplished something extraordinary, not just for Leo, but for every child yearning to be heard and cared for. Lastly, Jake understood the greatest achievement was never just about victory. It was about the journey, the commitment to embrace risk, cultivate change, and remain a passionate advocate for humanity, forging pathways toward brighter futures. So, step forward and strive. Be the change that sparks a flame. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories.
Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to support this journey. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share the message of hope.